All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the fifth video in our series on the seeds of peace building. My name is Lindsay Struth. I am a second year seminarian at United Lutheran Seminary. Um, and I am joined today by Hannah Weimer, who is the marketing director and program coordinator at Camp Sequanota in Boswell, Pennsylvania. So thank you for being here, Hannah. Welcome.
Hi.
So Hannah and I are actually connected through our work at Camp Sequanota. It was founded in 1947 by a group of pastors in the Allegheny Synod looking to set up a camp. And since then, for now over 75 years, it has served children, youth, adults, families, religious and secular groups, all through camping and retreat ministries.
We are not only a summer camp, but we are also a retreat center. And in that, we hold hosted ministries. So we will do retreats throughout the year for adults, for young adults, and for campers, elementary, junior high, and senior high. But we also are a summer camp where campers will be here there are several options. Some of them are here for the day, some of them are here for half a week. And some of them are here for the whole week. Sequanota's mission statement is Sequanota strives to connect Christ, creation, and community. And within those things,
Thanks.
all of those we lead into working together to form community within ourselves, but also then when campers and guests go out to take all of those skills that they have built while they are here also to the communities that they are in when they are not here.
Perfect. Which leads beautifully into what is the fifth seed of peace building, which is social enterprise. So, social enterprise is essentially organizations that embody all of the other seeds of peace building and work toward improving the community through power with instead of power over. I couldn't think of a better organization that I've been a part of than Camp Sequanota in being that kind of organization that ignites a community, teaches community, and sends back out into the world. What peace building do you see occur during weeks of camp?
So this happens regardless of what type of camp there is. I think when I think of campers coming on Sunday and leaving through Friday is when we really see that community being built. You get a group of campers Sunday afternoon that some of them have never been to camp before, some of them have never been with this group of people before, and then by Friday night they're crying because they don't want to leave their new best friends. With living in community, you are also going to deal with stressors and conflict, even in the short amount of time that is a week. Um, and so, not only with just campers, but also within staff when you're living together for 10 weeks at a time. And I think that those times, especially with campers, teaching them how to, one, work and live together, but also being in community together also means that we will get into conflict and we will deal with conflict as we go. Conflict is a scary word for a lot of us. And as a young adult, I also don't like to enter into conflict. So one of the things that we like to do at camp is to start teaching them earlier that conflict isn't necessarily a bad word, that staff can also help them lead conversations to help solve the problem, to help not just keep the peace, because we're not just trying to keep the peace, but teaching them that everybody's a viewpoint is valid and how we have conversations, especially when some of us might be different, whether we're different religions, whether we're different the way we were raised, or whether we live in a city or whether we live in a small town, and how we have those conversations in a constructive way that also is us showing care and compassion to each other.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And I think those are the skills that we see them take with them back to their homes and communities back home. Um,
absolutely.
yeah. The previous four discussions about peace building have been around literacy, embodied ritual, engaged empathy, and principal pluralism. How do you see these four other seeds incorporated into and played out in the setting of outdoor ministry?
Yeah, so literacy I think is pretty straightforward in the sense of when we are worshiping together and when we are at camp together, we are engaging in things that we are reading, we are teaching through the Bible, we are doing Bible studies and worship and campfire, and all of those things are planned and structured out in a way that other people can also be involved.
And
Um,
nature. We teach a
and
lot
nature.
about nature as well, especially for our more secular or other religious groups that come in. We'll do a lot of nature education.
Yes. When I think of embodied rituals, specifically at camp, as a staff, we have started worshiping together with just us as a staff on Sunday mornings to get ourselves prepared for the week. We do campfire and worship every night as a community. Um, some of my favorite parts of worship with campers is when we involve them in worship, whether that's in skits or telling of the message through a skit. Um, but some of the best worships are when we've been able to have the staff and the campers write their own prayers and have some of them come up and read their prayers for prayer petitions because it gives them an opportunity to share what is on their heart. And I also think that sometimes we are scared to pray out loud because we might think that we're not good at it, or we might not be good enough for God at it, which we all know. God hears our prayers regardless of how they sound to us. But I think that it begins to teach them that there are a lot of different ways to pray. And talking to God is one of those things that you can do it however you would like to. But it gets them more comfortable to be able to do it. Um, Empathy is a big thing at camp. Showing that love and care and compassion, you have to have empathy. Unfortunately, we are living in a world right now where it seems to be very easy to pin ourselves against someone else, whether it is their religious beliefs or their political beliefs or people that might just be a little different than us. And if there was just a little bit more empathy in the world, it would be a different place. Um, I am thankful that camp is a place that shows that empathy. Not only are we teaching it to campers, but we are also showing it to campers. Um, we have a significant amount of campers that come to us that identify with the LGBTQ community. And unfortunately, they have not had experiences where they have been welcomed before. And so seeing them engage in this community, one, means a lot to me because it shows us that we are a space where they feel like they can be themselves. But it also shows it goes both ways. We are showing them empathy, but other campers, we are learning how to engage with each other and using that care and compassion and being empathetic towards others, even when it feels like it's a really hard thing to do. When we lean into the empathy, it's really hard to not feel for somebody when you stop and you listen to their story. And I think that that's
Right.
something we all need to do more often. So, working when Lindsay was talking me through what some of these things meant, um, she had talked about different groups coming together, and I think that in the past several years, Sequanota has done a fantastic job in welcoming different groups here, meaning there is several different organizations that come here that are not Lutheran, that are not Christian, um, but they use this space as their safe space to learn more about their spirituality, their religion. Some of them are secular, some of them are not. We have partnered with the Catholic Diocese for several years, probably more than 25. And so we have a fantastic relationship with them as a group. For several years now, we have also been partnering with the MENA, which is the Muslim Youth of Northern America. Something that to an outside group would say, "Wow, you're at Lutheran church camp. Like, how does that fit in?" Um, to which my thought is, our differences are a lot less than our similarities. And it has been really cool to watch staff learn more about the
Yes.
Muslim faith and some of their cultural practices and traditions. And they are always very curious to learn more about what we do as Lutherans as well. And so seeing those relationships build has also been fantastic. It's interesting. Boswell is the middle of, rural Appalachia, hills and valleys of, Pennsylvania. And so the majority of probably not staff. Some of our staff have gone to different colleges and whatnot. However, some of our campers, I guarantee you, have never seen someone who is Muslim. They've never seen women in hijabs. And so being able to have that conversation and learning more about it automatically is giving us some more empathy because we are putting ourselves, we are hearing stories firsthand from these people that otherwise we in Somerset County are not going to see that kind of diversity.
So the next question, what role do you believe Christians have in social enterprises? And how do you think that plays into the idea of the beloved community?
We are sharing God's love and compassion. We are taking Jesus's commandment to love one another and using that care and compassion to show others grace and forgiveness and love. And so when we are working toward the common good of others, that's showing that love to others, whether that is a group that is secular, whether that is a group that is spiritual. To me, all of that is sharing God's love. When we are working with groups or when there are certain social enterprises that are working with, the least, this is our tagline. Lindsay knows our tagline. Pastor Nathan, who is the executive director of Sequanota, his tagline of caring for the least, the lost, the last, the lonely. But I think about how many groups fit into those categories, um, and how we can do so much more than what we are doing to help those communities in their times of need. Um, and I think all of that plays into the beloved community of how we share and show love towards others. And so the goal of camp is that everybody feels loved and connected and welcome when they are here. When they are learning about God's word and what Jesus calls us to do, that's just another way that they're going to then go out and share that love with others. Whether it's their school, whether it's their sports teams, and they might not be saying, this is God's love, this is Jesus's love. It's the way that they're acting when they go back that then is a direct correlation of the experiences that they had at camp.
That is a general camp favorite song is They'll Know We Are Christians by Our Love.
And another one that has gotten really popular in the last couple years is This is my commandment,
Yes.
that you love one another as I have loved you. And it's little, it's you get pretty excited.
It is pretty catchy.
It's reminding us of what our call is, and it's to go out and share the love of Christ with others.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So there are two kind of major concepts that go along with social enterprise. One is trust, and the other is power with instead of power over. So I want to talk about trust first. So just tell me a little bit about how you see trust built and established in the outdoor ministry setting.
So now it's story time
Okay.
with Lindsay. When I think of trust at camp, I think one of the first things I think of is the climbing tower and the zip line. I am trained in the tower and have been for several years. I am not a fan of being on top of the tower. I much prefer to be on the ground belaying. But this would have been several years ago. But one of the things that I was going to do was I was going to be the last one off of the top of the tower. And Lindsay smiles because she was the one that was at the top with me.
Yes, yes.
And I was sobbing because I was so worried. Because when you are the last one at the top of the tower, you have to get belayed down, which means that I am putting my trust and faith in the person at the bottom, that they are going to do everything correctly, and make sure that I am safe. I 100% knew Pastor Nathan was the one that was at the bottom. And he was not going to let anything happen to me. However, talking ourselves into something that's really scary is really hard. Lindsay gave me the pep talk that I needed. Then I sent her off the zip line and I was up there by myself. And it was scary. Um, because in that moment, I not only had to trust in Nathan, but I had to trust in the equipment. I think the bigger part was also trusting in myself that I had the courage to do it. Um, so I did. I got to the bottom. I was still crying. Lindsay gave me a hug. And that's still, I have been working at camp since 2012. I have had to trust in a lot of things while I was here, but that probably is one of the most significant moments, of putting trust in others and in myself. Um, that has been like such a like physical, knowing like such a physical thing to do. Um, that's the definition of camp. We're asking kids to do things that are really scary. I used to think that one of those things could be going down the zip line. I realize now that one of those things that could be really scary is them giving up their phone for a week. We have campers that are absolutely addicted to phones, and so the thought of them giving it up for a week is too much for them to handle. And so, how do we work with them and show them that not only they can make it without their phone, but what else are we going to be experiencing because of that? But those relationships and those conversations don't come if campers are not connected to the people that are around them, whether that's the staff, whether that's the campers, whether that's the program, the leaders. Because without that trust, it's significantly harder, for some of those things to happen. If campers are not willing to trust staff, then they're not going to be willing to go up the tower. If they're not willing to trust, campers and staff, they might not be able to have those really deep conversations that happen in Bible study. Right, with those teenagers that are very, very self-conscious of saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing. And so building trust within those groups and within camp allows all of those other things to happen. It allows the empathy to grow. It allows leadership skills to start building. It allows campers to form relationships that supersede most any other relationships. That's coming from experience of the camp people that are still in my life. They are the majority of the people that I will call to in the time of crisis when something has happened. They're also the people that I call to when really good news happens.
So, an important aspect of the social enterprise seed is that organizations are intentional about holding power with others and not power over others. How do you see this play out in your setting?
So when I think of power over, I think of like the bosses, like the micromanagers, or I think of the bosses that are just unkind to their employees, that there's nothing that the employee is ever going to be able to do right. Nothing is ever going to be good enough for the boss. And in that environment, it gives you no want, drive, or ability to try to improve. And so when I think of power with, I think of those relationships and the community of camp, from like top-down experience, right? Um, One, we all need to work together as a team to make sure that those experiences are happening. But if I am leading in a way that, my staff doesn't feel like they can come to me, whether there's a problem or something really great has happened, or they need help with a conflict within themselves, then I am not doing my job well. Um, Summer camp absolutely is for the campers, yes. I think in the world and the culture that we live in now, it is just as important for the young adults that are working on staff to learn how to work together, how to problem solve, how to lead, how to deal with conflict. Um, we're seeing a generation of young adults that cannot do some of those things, for a plethora of reasons that the studies and the data show us. Um, but without those skills, it is hard to be successful, whether you're going to be successful in a job, in relationships, in a marriage, in all of these things. Those skills are things that we're going to use forever. Mediation, conflict, problem solving, being flexible and adaptable. And so all of those play into power with, because the goal would be that I am then taking my power essentially and giving it to others and giving them the tools and the ability to then solve the problem on their own. None of that happens if there's power over. The culture of the organization changes, the culture of the staff, the culture of the campers, all of that changes. And when you have power over, it's a place where empathy is hard to find, where trust is hard to find, which is all of the things that we talked about tonight that people need to be able to, one, feel safe and connected, but it also is where we grow. Without having that power with, you don't get the success of campers and staff and guests learning more about themselves and being willing to dig deep and be vulnerable in situations where maybe other places in the world might tell them that they shouldn't do those things or they shouldn't say those things or be those things. But when you are working together for the common good of that, it changes the way that we are able to look at ourselves and others.
I'm attempting to imagine camp in a power over type of situation, and all I can come up with is this very superficial uh, type of experience that we always talk about, like what's the primary goal of camp, and some people like to think oh, it's just for fun, but if we're really set on the power with, it's not fun. It's about connecting and creating those relationships. And if that wasn't the case, yeah, it would just be this superficial trying to sell a product.
Well, and it wouldn't work. It
Right, it
wouldn't,
wouldn't.
you would
Right,
not be successful. Like, one, you wouldn't be successfully working towards the mission of connecting Christ creation and community, but also it wouldn't be camp. Like,
right,
camp
right,
doesn't happen in that kind of environment because it's not what places like this have been created to be.
right, right. And I think that's such an important thing to remember with any other organization. Because yes, we've been talking about this in a camp setting, but I think these are all things to live by in any social organization that we're a part of. If we can work on that authentic connection, that true empathy, all of that, that we really condense in a camp setting, but that we can use on a daily basis outside of camp. I think that is such a good outlook for peace building efforts is to use those skills.
One of the things that we use in the camping world is that camp is the mountaintop experience. We can't be on the mountain forever. Like, we have to also do the work. And
Yes.
so how do we take that mountaintop experience and how do we teach staff and campers and guests to now go share that mountaintop experience, whether it's something they did or something they learned or how they experienced God, and sharing that mountaintop experience, they're hearing a piece of that authenticity, they're hearing a piece of that courage. And so that's just moving us one step closer to being able to live out life in this way together.
Yeah, our community extends much further than the 400 acres that Sequoia is physically located on. It
Absolutely.
extends to all of the campers, past and present. And then, like you're saying, it extends then to everybody that they have told about this place and what they've learned here. And I can't think of a much better definition than the beloved community in those connections that we make with each other.
Yeah. One of the great things that I am able to do being at camp year round is I am the closest person to the office. And so on Saturdays and Sundays, when there are older generations driving around on Sunday after church, I am usually the person that they find. But then I go down and engage with these past campers of 60s, of the 70s. Um, and I hear their experience, and was it different? Yes, but the concept is always the same. And the sentiment is always the same of it feels different here. This was a place where I knew that I was loved for who I was. And and knowing that multiple generations have felt that here is one of the greatest rewards of being in this job.
Thank you so much, Hannah, for agreeing to do this interview with me. Remember with social enterprises that there are so many out there that already exist, that have been around for a while, that are doing great work in peace building, not just outdoor ministries like Sequanota. Look for those groups in your community. They're there, they exist, they're doing great work. Thank you so much for joining.